Sure. So Tom, as a homeless man, was a man of many pockets. And he wore coats in the summertime as well as the winter time. And part of that was because if you don't have a place to put your stuff, you got to carry your stuff with you, right? And Tom was never one to carry a knapsack or a backpack or anything like that. So, he had different things in his pockets at different times. And when he passed away, I went through his coat. And we had done this many, many times over the years. We'd sit at McDonald's and he would go through all of his pockets trying to find a $20 bill or whatever it was that he, thought that he had. Oftentimes he would find it. So on the cover, I have items that were in his pocket after he passed away at the hospice. And then I also have items that were in his room where he lived for the last 10 years of his life, because he went from being a homeless man on the streets to finally, after going into detox program after detox program and always relapsing, because where are people supposed to go? What do you want a homeless person to do? You get them, they're sober, and then you got no place to go. You're going to be out on the streets. I mean, it's just not realistic, right? So, but Tom got really, really ill, and I thought that he wasn't going to make it, but he made it through, and by then he was prepared to try a managed alcohol program. So a managed alcohol program is a harm reduction model. So it's not making people who are chronically addicted stop using what they use, but it's helping them use in a safer way, in a more managed way. And it gives them a chance to regain some of the dignity that they've definitely lost. And it gives them a chance because it's remarkable, but the people who work, the staff who work in the managed alcohol program, they're all such caring and wonderful people. So they became Tom's family. So that was the great thing about Tom agreeing to go into that program. He went in October, and myself and his worker at the time, we said, Tom, just try it for the winter. We're moving into the winter now. You're not going to live another winter on the Ottawa streets. It's friggin' cold here in the winter time, And so he said, okay, I'm not making any promises, but I will try it just for the winter. But then he didn't leave. He got stabilized in the program, and once he got stabilized in the program, I could do an art exhibit for him, because this is part of what happened when Tom was on the streets. He would continue to do his paintings, and he would continue to sell them. And I said, Tom, this is crazy. These are worth so much more. So I said, I'll make you a deal. You give me your paintings, I'll keep them safe, and someday when you're well enough, I will arrange an art exhibit for you. And so he agreed to that. So he literally did hundreds of paintings. And then when he agreed to go into this managed alcohol program, a year after, he said to me, so what happened to our deal? And I said, what deal? And he said, you told me if I could get myself well enough that you would do an exhibit. And I said, you're right. It's not that I hadn't been thinking about it, but I just wanted him to, feel like he was ready for it. And then by chance, there was, at the time, there was an Aboriginal restaurant in the market called Sweetgrass, and they always had art exhibits there. And this is like a month before his 50th birthday. So I phoned them, I phoned Sweetgrass, and I said, I'd like to do this exhibit, blah, blah, blah. And she said, well, we've got a long list of artists. But she said, the artist for November has polled. So you could do the November show, but we were thinking of doing the vernissage on the 31st of October. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is Tom's 50th birthday. Like, how could this be happening, right? So that's what happened. So we did that exhibit, and then after that, over the years, I did 8 more exhibits for him.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast today, Living the Next Chapter. I have an author with me from Canada. Yay! And we're going to be talking about a very special person. And my author today has captured to her the best of her ability, the life and times of a very special person who has ties to where I live, which is exciting for me, because I'm going to go and retrace the steps of what we talk about today in my own community, which is an honor for me, I got to say right off the bat. But it's all around a gentleman named Tom, and we're going to be talking about a book that has come out, and my guest, as Joanne, she's going to be joining us today to talk about it. Welcome, Joanne, to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here and happy to talk about my book.
Awesome. And a good friend as well, someone that you've grown to love over time. And I'm excited to kind of share his journey as well with us as we go through this. Tell us a little bit about where you are in the world first, Joanne, for our listeners that are listening around the world.
I'm in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. So I live right downtown in Ottawa.
Very good. And that's our nation's capital for anyone outside of the country. This is where it all happens. And it's exciting.
The convoy happened.
There you go. You might have heard of that. The sounds of it.
I sure did.
Yeah, I bet. But yeah, I'm glad you're safe. Everything's good there in Ottawa. Is that home for you for a long time or relatively?
Yes.
Okay.
Most of my adult life, I've been here in Ottawa.
Beautiful. Awesome. I have family there too. It's great. Beautiful city. Great people there in Ottawa. So, and close to Quebec, which is really kind of amazing. So awesome. It's really good to have you on the show. We're going to be talking about a book that you wrote on behalf of somebody very special that you came to know. Can you tell us about the title of the book and a little overview before we jump into our conversation about the book?
Sure. Yeah. So my book is called Tom's Story, My 16-Year Friendship with a Homeless Man. And Tom, I met Tom when I helped coordinate an art group for people who were marginalized because of poverty, homelessness, addiction, childhood trauma, all of those things. I had gone to a meeting. I was working in social services at the time with anonymous HIV testing and needle exchange program. But I used to be a graphic artist. And so I was at this meeting, and the meeting was going to be to see if we could arrange an art group for people who wouldn't necessarily have a place to paint or do their art or a place to store it. And so we had a meeting, and that was at the mission. And during that meeting, there were homeless people, marginalized people that came. And because posters were put up at different shelters and that kind of thing. So there were a lot of people from the community who already worked in social services who were there, but there were also some people who clearly wanted to participate in the art group. And one of those people was Tom. And so we did a check-in and a check-out. And at the end of that meeting, when, everyone was asked, how do you feel about this? What are your thoughts on the group? Tom said, look, I'm a chronic alcoholic, and all I want to do is have a place to paint. And so it took us about 2 weeks. We raised, $300 or something, and we found a spot to run the art group at a community housing building called Options by Town for people who were marginalized. It's a very successful model for dealing with the homelessness issue. And so Tom came to that first art group, and he didn't talk to anyone. By then he was on crutches. But he did take a canvas, and he sat down and he did a painting, which was really, really good, a really good painting in the style of Norval Morrisseau's paintings, Woodland style. And he did the painting, he went out for a smoke, and then he came back and got the painting, and he put it under his arm, and he left the group. But he came again to the next group. And he kept coming to the group, but he was always leaving with his paintings. And so I saw him outside of the group on the street corner with his paintings, selling it. And I realized that's what he was doing. He was taking his paintings and taking them out on the street and selling them for the price of a bottle of sherry. So I just... I know the story of Norval Morrisseau and how that happened in his life many, many times. So the first time that Tom talked in the group was about a month later, or maybe 2 months later. Someone mentioned that their birthday was coming up. And Tom, for the first time, said something. He said, "My birthday is on Halloween." And that day he did a painting which was a little bit different than most of his paintings. And so when he was ready to leave, I asked him to kind of, just hang around. And then I left with him, and I kind of followed him, and I said, "Tom, if it's okay with you, I would like to buy that painting from you." And he said, "Sure." And I said, "But I don't have a lot of money." I said, "I only have $40. But he said, "Oh, that's okay, because I usually get like $6 or $7 for a painting." So I bought the painting because it was his birthday. And so that is how I started kind of hanging out with Tom. So what happened at the next group, he stayed till the end with his painting, thinking that I was going to buy the next painting too.
Right.
But I just didn't have that kind of money. So that's how our friendship kind of started. He started walking me after the group to the gym if I was going to the gym or home or wherever. And that's kind of how we started hanging out.
So is there a reason why you in particular are drawn to helping people in this situation? Is there something special for you that is, I guess there's people who sadly ignore people in this situation and walk past them or step over them in life, and they don't think twice. Why is this special to you that to work with people like Tom and to spend time with Tom?
Well, I don't really, I can probably a whole bunch of reasons for that I can't really answer. But one thing I can tell you is one of my brothers died when he was 32. And he was only 15 months younger than me, and he died of a cocaine overdose. So, and he was marginalized because he had very severe dyslexia, but that wasn't diagnosed until he was in grade 8. And actually, he would have been grade 9, but they failed him in grade 1. So what happened was my brother Davy, of course, he went through public school, oftentimes out in the hall, and I read his report cards and all of that, saying maybe he watches too much TV, maybe it's because his parents speak Dutch at home, all of this stuff. So having 8 years of that, my brother definitely had low self-esteem, and he was very, very smart, and I knew that from the very, very beginning that he was really, really smart, way smarter than me. So I guess maybe that's partly why. Maybe because you can't really lose someone to a cocaine overdose in your family and not feel like there's something you could have done. I know it's not my fault, but it's possible that I put some of my energy into Tom because I didn't do that
Interesting.
with my brother. That's possible.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't really say.
Yeah, because in my own family, we have someone who's married into our family, my extended family, who was homeless, living in Toronto on the streets. And now, like, if you met him, you would not really know that part of his story. But there
Right.
was times, and he's mentioned, where people would step over him or walk the other side of the road to avoid him. And
Yeah.
he was just looking for someone like you who saw past the exterior. Maybe there's fear, maybe there's, I don't know, there's something about it for some people that just can't see the person that is on the street. And so when I met you and we talked earlier, I just felt that you radiate what my relative was looking for, living on the street and living through cold winter nights
Yeah.
here in Canada, which
Yeah.
are not easy to survive.
Yeah.
And then there's someone like you that comes along and shows genuine love and compassion. That's gotta bring people to you, and kind of, that I really admire that.
Well, it's very nice of you to say all of that, but I have to admit, and I do write about it in the book, that if we were to weigh who gave more, I would say Tom gave me more than
Okay.
I. In
like
my that's my personal feeling.
I like that.
What I got to experience and the kind of person that he was, and getting to meet his other friends who were marginalized. And Tom was a First Nations man, so he knew a certain amount about his culture.
Yeah.
He was really funny. He was just really intelligent. And I didn't have a partner. I didn't have children. So, I think we all need someplace to put a bit of love. And maybe some people find other ways to do that. I never thought I was saving Tom's life, but it was pretty easy for me to see that there were certain things I could do that would improve his life. Right. I could advocate for him. So yeah, we connected on a level that I can't really explain why. But in my book, I have a photo of Tom and I that was taken a long time ago. And under it, I have this quote, which is by Carl Jung. And it says, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Mm. And I think that's kind of it. We did, in a way, change each other's lives. And how cool is that, right? How cool is that to be able to do that and to be part of that? So,
and I think that's a good lesson for anyone listening, is to be aware of the interactions we can have with others and allow people to impact you, and allow, and then put yourself out there to potentially impact someone else just by caring. I think that's something that we can all do.
We can all do that. We can all. Sometimes I would sit with Tom on the street corner, and of course, then people would assume that I was homeless too, right? And the looks, like, some people would give Tom money. Sometimes people would put a loonie or a quarter on my knee, which then I would put in Tom's cup. But oftentimes, people, would look at me with disgust, like women. There were women who walked by who were really nicely dressed and all that. And, this look of disgust, like, not all women, I'm not saying that, but it really struck me when it was a woman who did that for some reason, probably just because I'm a woman. But I think that this is fear. I think that when people have that sort of, disgust or whatever, it's really just fear, kind of fear of the unknown. And maybe, maybe on some level we all know that we could be homeless. I mean, it is possible that any one of us could end up homeless. And so if we kind of don't engage with that, if we don't look at it, it's not going to be part of our world. We can just kind of make them the other, but they're not the other. they're us. They're part of this world we live in and part of our community. These people were all babies. They were all babies at one time. None of them aspired to the lives that they have now. None of them aspired to that. Things went terribly wrong in their lives, and most people on the streets have had incredible trauma in their childhood. So, I mean, it's one thing to tell someone on the street, get a life, get a job, whatever. Well, how can you do that if you haven't had the help to process the trauma that you've encountered? How do you move on from that? Well, you don't. You just find whatever you need to numb your pain, right? And that's alcohol, whatever. But, there's another part of me that really enjoyed the kind of not having to worry about anything, but just sitting there and listening to Tom. Just not having to deal with any of the other parts of my life at all. Just kind of falling into this routine of sitting there, waiting till he had enough money for his bottle, and then walking to the liquor store so he could get his bottle, and then, him walking me home. But then, of course, what I do is I would write that experience of spending that time with Tom, because every time I was with Tom, he had some incredible story to tell me, or, we'd have an encounter with a police officer or one of his friends.
Amazing. So for the people that are listening to our podcast, and on the cover for today's podcast is a picture from the cover of your book.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain to me what the significance of the items that we're seeing on the front cover of this book?
Sure. So Tom, as a homeless man, was a man of many pockets. So, and he wore coats in the summertime as well as the winter time. And part of that was because if you don't have a place to put your stuff, you got to carry your stuff with you, right? And Tom was never one to carry a knapsack or a backpack or anything like that. So, he had different things in his pockets at different times. And when he passed away, I went through his coat. And we had done this many, many times over the years. We'd sit at McDonald's and he would go through all of his pockets trying to find a $20 bill or whatever it was that he, thought that he had. Oftentimes he would find it. So on the cover, I have items that were in his pocket after he passed away at the hospice. And then I also have items that were in his room where he lived for the last 10 years of his life, because he went from being a homeless man on the streets to finally, after going into detox program after detox program and always relapsing, because where are people supposed to go? What do you want a homeless person to do?
Yeah.
You get them, they're sober, and then you got no place to go. You're going to be out on the streets. I mean, it's just not realistic, right? So, but Tom got really, really ill. And I thought that he wasn't going to make it, but he made it through. And by then he was prepared to try a managed alcohol program. So a managed alcohol program is a harm reduction model. So it's not making people who are chronically addicted stop using what they use, but it's helping them use in a safer way, in a more managed way. And it gives them a chance to regain some of the dignity that they've definitely lost. And it gives them a chance because it's remarkable. But the people who work, the staff who work in the managed alcohol program, they're all such caring and wonderful people. So they became Tom's family.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was the great thing about Tom agreeing to go into that program. He went in October, and myself and his worker at the time, we said, Tom, just try it for the winter. We're moving into the winter now. You're not going to live another winter on the Ottawa streets. Like, it's friggin' cold here in the winter time, And so he said, okay, I'm not making any promises, but I will try it just for the winter. But then he didn't leave. He got stabilized in the program. And once he got stabilized in the program, I could do an art exhibit for him, because this is part of what happened when Tom was on the streets. He would continue to do his paintings and he would continue to sell them. And I said, Tom, this is crazy. These are worth so much more. So I said, I'll make you a deal. You give me your paintings. I'll keep them safe. And someday when you're well enough, I will arrange an art exhibit for you.
Wow.
And so he agreed to that. So he literally did hundreds of paintings. And then when he agreed to go into this managed alcohol program, a year after, he said to me, so what happened to our deal? And I said, what deal? And he said, you told me if I could get myself well enough that you would do an exhibit. And I said, you're right. It's not that I hadn't been thinking about it, but I just wanted him to, feel like he was ready for it. And then by chance, there was, at the time, there was an Aboriginal restaurant in the market called Sweetgrass, and they always had art exhibits there. And this is like a month before his 50th birthday. So I phoned them. I phoned Sweetgrass and I said, I'd like to do this exhibit, blah, blah, blah. And she said, well, we've got a long list of artists. But she said, the artist for November has pulled. So you could do the November show, but we were thinking of doing the vernissage on the 31st of October. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is Tom's 50th birthday.
Wow.
Like, how could this be happening, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So that's what happened. So we did that exhibit. And then after that, over the years, I did 8 more exhibits for him. Yeah.
That's great. And I anticipate that his paintings sold and they were more than a bottle of alcohol in value. And that's exciting to hear that as well. So that's any stories about where his paintings ended up that you know of?
Well, I know that the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto has 3 of his paintings.
What?
So, yeah, I found that out. Well, Tom was still alive when we found that out, so someone had donated them.
Wow.
Yeah, Tom's paintings they're probably all over the world, to tell you the truth. I would say he's painted thousands of paintings, probably. But during the time that I had his exhibits, he had people who just, they said, next time you do an exhibit, let me know. So I never had any problem finding, people to come to the exhibits. And I think the most expensive one we sold at that time was $2,000.
Wow.
Which is not bad.
That's amazing.
When you think about it, eh? But
Right.
The thing is with Tom, the money really didn't mean anything to him.
Right.
Like, it wasn't about the money for him.
Yeah. And
the other thing about Tom is that first exhibit, the CTV came, CBC came, there were cameras, he was being interviewed. Like a year prior, this is a guy sitting on the street corner who has lost control of his bladder, passed out, has pneumonia. He just was really, really ill, really, really ill. And then a year later, he's talking to the media like he's done this like 100 times before. This is, my mythology, and this is what this is about. And I get my ideas from here. And it's like, I'm watching this, I'm thinking, it's just surreal. It's just unbelievable.
So take me to the moment where he walked into the gallery setup of all of his paintings, and he walks through the door with you and sees his work displayed the way it is. What kind
Yeah.
of conversation did you have with Tom in that moment? I'd love to know.
So when I brought Tom in, so I have to tell you one thing that happened though, which makes this so cool. When Tom was in one of the recovery programs, like probably, let's see, when would that have been? So I met him in 98. So probably in the early 2000s, he was in a program. And this program had a First Nation sort of approach to dealing with addictions and recovery. And he went to a powwow with his worker. And so then I went to see him, and he gave me a shirt, which was obviously a man's shirt. And it was really big, would have been really big for me. But it was such a nice, kind, gesture. And it was a shirt made by First Nations people. So it had ribbons on it, and it had bear appliques and, all of that. So I said to him at that time, I said, Tom, this is great, but it's too big for me. But I said, you know what? I'll keep it for you. And then maybe you can wear it at your first exhibit. So the night before we do the exhibit, I'm talking to Tom on the phone, and he said, because he was really excited about it, he said, what am I going to wear? What am I going to wear? And I said, I've got the perfect shirt for you. So that's what he wore to his exhibit, that shirt. And it fit him perfectly because he had put on enough weight that he could actually wear it. So I put up the exhibit the week before, and then I went and picked up Tom on the night of the exhibit, and I brought him into the restaurant. So I brought him in before there were any other people there.
Nice.
And I always got Tom to name his paintings, like to always tell me what name so I could write it on the back, and then I would put the date. And I kind of guessed at the prices. Like this is not something that I have a lot of training in, but I do pay attention to these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So we walked in, and Tom was like, wow. He said, I did all of these? He said, I can't believe I did all of these. And there weren't really that many paintings there compared to how many he has done, Yeah. But he walked around, and he was very, very proud. And he also said to me, he said, I couldn't have done this without you, Joanne. And I said, well, Tom, I said, really? I said, all I did was hang the paintings, basically. I said, you did the work. If you hadn't done the work, I wouldn't, have hung these paintings. But he was always very gracious about how, I tried to do the best that I could do for him. And as I say, I'm not, sometimes I would be with Tom, like there was a not a secondhand store, but kind of a bargain store in Ottawa called Big Buds. And I was there once with him because homeless people have feet issues. They have feet issues because they're walking around all the time. They don't get to take their boots off or their shoes off or their socks off.
Right.
And if you do that at a mission, there's a chance, or at a shelter, someone might take them, right? So homeless people have feet issues, So I bought Tom a pair of boots for for Christmas. And it was a day when Tom was feeling pretty good. He had had a bit of alcohol, but not too much. But I was a little nervous about him being in this store, but he was fine. So he was looking at the boots, and I was kind of just letting him choose what boots he wanted. And there was a young woman there. She looked like she walked out of a Gap commercial. She was young. She looked like she had it all together. And she came over to me and she said, I really appreciate what you're doing with him. And I said, oh, it's no big deal. And she said, no. She said, it is a big deal. She said, because I am so afraid of homeless people. And I said, well, what are you afraid of? And she said, I don't know. But she said, I don't want to give them money because, they might use it for the drugs or alcohol or whatever. And I said, you don't have to give them money. But I said, just keep in mind that if I were homeless on the streets, I would probably be chronically addicted to something too, because it's escape from pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I said, you don't have to give them money, but you can smile. You can make eye contact so that they don't feel invisible, because they really feel invisible. They really don't feel like they belong, and they do. They're part of this society we live in. So yeah, that kind of sometimes would happen to me, and it would be like, I'm not being Mother Teresa here. You know what I mean? I'm just doing something that I kind of can do. It was never that big of a deal.
And I guess some people might think, Joanne, that it's overwhelming, that there's so many people who need help, that, there's the need is so big that my efforts will seem insignificant. So I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Right. And, but that's the worst decision to make, right? Because even if you can help Tom, and that's as far as you can go, if that's all you can do, you helped one person.
Yeah.
You've changed the direction of that person's life. And now there's a story in book form to document this incredible man's journey. And that's what I love. It's the fact that you, instead of saying it's too much work, there's too many people who need help, I can't do enough, I'm not going to do anything. You're like, I'm going to help one person, and let's just see where this goes. And now we're having a conversation about Tom. That's beautiful to me.
Well, yeah, I guess it is. Thank you. But I mean, I think that's our way out, right? If we all just help one person, I mean, if the whole world just helped one person, right? Done. And it is more complicated now. It's more complicated because Tom was chronically addicted to alcohol. Ottawa has, I'm sure your city has, a lot of cities all over the world have problems with homelessness and fentanyl, the opioids, all of that. And that makes for a different kind of personality, because that addiction is so incredibly harsh, and it immobilizes people. Tom was never, like Tom would be fall down drunk sometimes, but I was never concerned about me not being able to deal with him, figuring out what do we do with this guy? How do I deal with this? I think that's more challenging now with people on fentanyl and opioids, because it really messes with your brain in a different way,
So beyond capturing Tom's story through photos and all the amazing things you have in this book, do you have a big hope for this book as far as the audience is going to reach and how they're going to interact with this book?
Well, I would like, I mean, it's one thing to write a book, right, and get it published. It's another thing to get it into the hands of people so that they can read it, and so that then they can at least, I mean, if anyone who reads this book, if then they see homeless people as people instead of, homeless, that's already a step in the right direction. If it cracks someone's heart open just a tiny little bit so that they realize, it's a pretty hard road to end up being homeless, and getting back on a road to get away from homelessness is even harder. So we cannot expect people on the streets to do this by themselves. They need support. Most people on the streets don't have the support and the family that a lot of us do, So I hope it makes people feel a little bit more compassion. I would love my book to end homelessness, but that's not going to happen, Right. But there are things that can be done. Harm reduction programs work. This idea that we're giving them drugs and, that kind of thing. Well, yeah, it's true. But you're giving them at least alcohol or whatever the drug is, something that's clean and pure. And if you can do that, you're not just giving them drugs, you're giving them care and compassion and concern. And if you can give that to people, they start feeling that they actually have value. So it's pretty hard to stop using and abusing if you don't feel you have any value. But if people treat you with respect, you learn to treat yourself with respect. And then some people may very well end up, going into recovery programs and not using. Or not. But if you even look at it from a financial perspective, it's cheaper to give people a clean drug and to provide them with housing than to do the opposite. You look at the ambulances that have to go out, the hospitals, it's all of this stuff doesn't have to happen if we take care. And there are models all over the world where this already works. We do not need another study on how to deal with this.
Yeah. So one thing I love too is your perspective, Joanne, is sitting next to Tom on the street and seeing the reaction of people, seeing it through Tom's view of how he's treated and how he's maybe mistreated by general public while he's out there, right? And, it's funny because you say that girl was afraid of street people and people that are homeless, and you were sitting beside him in another situation. So she technically could have been afraid of you.
Exactly.
And I'm like, wow, we've come so far. Like the other thing I heard an instructor, a university professor was doing a class on ethics. And before the class, he dressed as a homeless person out in the common space of the school to see his students on the way to his class and to see what they would do. So he was in the way as far as their path to class.
Yeah.
And every student had to walk past him. So no one helped him on their way to the ethics class in university.
Wow. Yeah.
And as all the students are waiting in class, where's the teacher? The door opens and this homeless man walks into the room and they're all like, what's going on? And he takes off all the layers and he starts talking about ethics and practice. And he said, all of you just failed. If this was a test, you've all failed. You walked right past me.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even speak to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what a lesson in the busyness of life. And I got to get to my next meeting, Joanne. I'm busy. I got things going on and this person's in the way, or can't they just get a job? Like, why is this my problem? There's this part of us, I think, that needs to soften, I think.
Yeah. But I have to say, so Tom had, he had 3 spots where he always panhandled. And you probably have noticed this if you notice homeless people at all. They have their areas where they usually are at certain times of the day. And Tom was a very smart man. So he would panhandle in an area on Kent Street. He called it Wall Street because there were big office towers there. And he said, this is where the people, who are going to work in the morning and stuff. He said, these people are the people that sometimes give me money. So I would sometimes spend time with him there. But he also he called them his customers. And they would give him money, or they would bring leftovers from dinner from the night before, because he got to be a fixture, in their part of their day, walking by him. Or they'd say, hey, Tom, I haven't seen you for a couple of days. I was starting to worry about you. Are you okay? So, yeah, I think the problem is there's just too much space, or we see too much space between ourselves and homeless people. Yes. I think most people generally, if it weren't such an overwhelming thing, would be able to have a little bit of time and space for a homeless person, I think. I'm just lucky, I think, that I did have that time and space.
Right.
And I always kind of had cared about the underdog, maybe because my brother was kind of an underdog. Maybe that's why. I don't know. I mean, they're all people. They've all had awful stuff happen to them, and so we can't really blame them out of it.
Right.
They didn't ask for it. No, nobody aspires to homelessness or chronic addiction.
No. I love talking to you, Joanne. This is so interesting. And again, what a beautiful story on behalf of Tom. Before I have one more question for you before we go, but as far as if someone's interested and they want to see Tom's works, are they available online somewhere where we can physically see them?
Oh, let me think about that for a second.
Like we can see them. Do you have pictures in the book as well from Tom?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
And I didn't for a reason.
Okay.
I need to be careful because I am a privileged white woman, right? And Tom was a First Nations man.
Right.
Well, he was Métis. And I just wanted to be really careful not to exploit that part.
Okay, I got it.
But friends have told me that they've Googled Tom Hogan and they've seen some of his artwork.
Okay.
If you want, I could send you a photo of one of his paintings or some of his paintings if you'd like to put them.
I think it's a nice addition to our conversation to see, right? And go, wow, like it's beautiful. Like it might be one little add-on we can do to the podcast to celebrate Tom, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
Great. And then as far as the book, is it available everywhere? Is there a certain place where we should go to purchase?
Well, it's available through the publisher, which is Nimbus, Nimbus.
Okay.
That's in Nova Scotia, but it's also available at some local bookstores across Canada, for sure. 4 of the bookstores here in Ottawa.
Okay.
But if people want the book, you can either just order it online or you can just go to your local bookstore, independent bookstore, if you can.
Please.
And they'll order it for you. Like they will order it for you.
Awesome.
Yeah, so if you could do that, it is available, of course, on Amazon, but let's face it, Mr. What's his name? Benzo?
Yeah. He's okay.
He has enough money. Come on.
Support your independent bookstore for sure.
Support your independent bookstores if you can. And also it's if you can't afford the book, I totally get that. Go to your library and ask your library to order it. And they will order it.
It's exciting. Okay, Joanne. So again, for the person listening, and they haven't put a lot of time and effort and thought into how they can help the world. And I know you're going to say, well, I only did something small, but it is something big to Tom. How can we do something this week to acknowledge, maybe lessen the space between us and someone that needs help? Give us something that we can do as listeners to impact somebody's life. Because what you've modeled for us, whether you had planned it mentally or it just happened organically, it happened and you helped somebody. I just don't want to leave this conversation undone by us not saying, well, what can we do today? Something practical from your point of view. I'd love to get that inspiration from you.
The next time you see a homeless person, make eye contact if you can and say hello. It's a very small thing, but it might actually be a big thing. If you live in an area where you see the same people all the time, maybe start developing some sort of interaction with them, talk to them. Homeless people don't want your money as much as they want to feel like you see them, because they feel invisible and they're not. So just letting someone know that you see them, you don't have to give them money. Just let them know that you recognize this is another person here. Instead of just walking by, say hello. That's it. That's, if you want to do something else, you could purchase the book and then learn more, because this book is about harm reduction programs too. And we need more harm reduction programs. We need more housing. So if you want something else to do, check out homelessness in terms of what housing is available in your area. You know, those kinds of things. Start little conversations. And little conversations can lead to big ones, but ask questions. We have I believe, as Gandhi said, societies should be judged by how they treat their most vulnerable people. Mm. And we're failing terribly.
Yeah.
We're failing terribly. So just find a little bit of space for, you know, a homeless person. I'm not saying you have to take them in, do what I did with Tom. I did that for my own reasons, but just start realizing these are people, they were babies, and they're still people.
They have a story. And it's great when someone can uncover that and capture a story on behalf of them, now that they're not here with us anymore, and continue the legacy and the story of Tom. And I love that you've done that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It's amazing. Joanne, I'm very impressed speaking with you. And I can sense your passion for what you talk about and what you live. And again, it goes beyond just going and getting more information. There's an action piece that needs to happen on behalf of us. Yeah. And I think that's the difference. We can't just fill our head with knowledge about what's going on. We need to actually put some action steps in process as well. I think that's part of the solution.
Yeah, just something small.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Awesome. And writing the book, I would not say is a small thing. It's a big thing. And thank you, Joanne, for doing this and for sharing Tom's story. I'm sure he'd be proud as when he wore that shirt to his first gallery. He'll be just as proud to know that his book is helping others as well. So thank you for doing this.
Okay, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Great.
Everyone, please check out the show notes, and we'll have an image for you too in the future of some of Tom's work. But I would love that you would buy this book, and then as well, maybe purchase an extra copy and donate it, and get the message of Tom out there. I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of Living the Next Chapter. Hey, look, we're having such a great time talking to authors around the world. If you are an author and you would like to be on this very show, I would love to talk to you. livingthenextchapter.com, livingthenextchapter.com, livingthenextchapter.com is the best way to get in touch with us. There you'll find our social media and blah, 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 la-di-da, and such. You, author, soon-to-be author, new author, currently writing your book author, published author, we need you here. The seat's empty, microphone set up, we're waiting for you. livingthenextchapter.com. We would love to have you on the podcast. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Yeah, you should be here. See you at livingthenextchapter.com.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.